everyone. Thank you for joining our Everything MDM and PIM webcast series today. We see a number of people still logging in, so we're going to give them another minute or two. Please make sure to submit your questions under Q&A so we can ensure that we receive them. Questions will be addressed during the end of the presentation. All sessions are being recorded. You will receive an email Thursday afternoon with a link to the recording. Also, we will have one lucky attendee who will receive a $50 Lululemon gift card for attending today's session. That winner will receive an email later today. So everyone, please make sure, if you haven't already, to register for the additional sessions in our series so you can be entered in our next drawing.
Welcome, everyone, to the latest installment in our series of virtual conferences, Everything MDM, brought to you by Winshuttle. Hello, I'm Currie Young, VP and GM for Enterworks. In today's virtual conference, we're going to switch things up a bit and have invited an exciting panel of experts to discuss how Neogen is using PIM to create a foundation for multi-ERP and business unit expansion. Next slide, please. Our panelists for today's discussion are Scott Carney from Neogen, Jonathan Currie and Tom Williams from C2, and Steve Thomas from Winshuttle. Scott is the Senior Director of IT at Neogen. In his role, he directs the planning and implementation of enterprise systems and software for Neogen. Jonathan Currie is the Data and Integration Consulting Manager at C2. He manages C2's Data and Integration Consulting practice. Steve Thomas is a Senior Solution Architect with Enterworks. And in his role, he has assisted over 40 companies in the design of foundational data models to support master data requirements. And lastly, but not least, Tom Williams is the VP of Digital Services and e-business at C2. He oversees strategy, business development, and delivery, as well as general management and responsibility for the practice. So before we get started, for those of you who are unfamiliar with Winshuttle and Enterworks, let me share a little bit about us. Winshuttle is a specialist in data management and process automation. We offer an all-in-one platform for multi-domain MDM, PIM, and DAM, meaning that you can implement multiple domains of data on a single instance of the solution without installing any additional software. Our solution is highly configurable, meaning it can be implemented with little to no programming, and because of that, typically offers a very low total cost of ownership compared to other MDM solutions. Our solution can be deployed as a fully managed solution in the cloud, in your own private cloud or data center, and is rated highly by all of the industry analysts, including Forrester, who rated Enterworks as a leader in both PIM and MDM, the only PIM or MDM solution provider who's rated as a leader in both reports. Okay, next slide, please. Winshuttle has over 2,500 customers across the globe, and we work with leading manufacturers, distributors, and retailers in most industry verticals, including food, CPG, apparel, and home furnishings. Okay, it is my honor now to turn it over to our esteemed panelists. Tom, please take it away.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Currie. Very excited to be here with everybody. Very excited to have such a fantastic group to talk about PIM today. So it's interesting. I was thinking back, about a year ago or so. What makes this panel interesting is that this was everyone on the panel was in the original on-site implementation meeting with Neogen about a year ago or so. I was there, Jonathan, Steve was there, obviously Scott, as we kicked things off and kind of pushed forward with part of the digital transformation. So as we get going here, I think it's pretty interesting to point out that Scott Carney is kind of a glutton for punishment as far as digital transformation goes. The guy does not hold back, and he went after everything kind of at once, which was not just PIM, but on top of that, a website and an e-commerce redesign and replatform nearly simultaneously. So with that, I just want to kind of throw that to Scott. First question off, Scott, kind of what was the decision making around going after everything so quickly, and sort of how did you stack the order to be sure that everything wasn't just right on top of itself?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Appreciate the intro. The real key driver of our business kind of transformation or digital transformation in the commerce space here was really to create a new self-service channel, or really enhance our capabilities in a self-service channel. So we really wanted to complement our sales approach with a traditional sales model, inside sales model, and then to have an equal complementary self-service channel model that our sales could really drive that activity. Because of that, because we're a multinational company, we really wanted to drive an enterprise capable solution. And when we started down the road in the journey of selecting a technology platform for the commerce self-service channel, we quickly found that we needed to do a product information management evaluation and product tool set as well. And with that, we had really a dual activity then, because a lot of the commerce systems can have what's called a PIM Lite, or a product information management light capabilities, as well as digital asset management capabilities. However, because of the complex or more number of SKUs and the complex nature of the SKUs, or varied disparate type of SKUs we have in our product sets, we quickly found we knew we needed a product information management system. So that was the second piece of it. We did look at as well a digital asset management capabilities, but we decided to go with because of EnterWorks capabilities and some of the others that we evaluated. But really, the EnterWorks capabilities for us met our needs and complemented what we were trying to do on the commerce side, as well as future product information management across our enterprise as well. So that was really I would say the large part of the driving force with that. And we knew it was going to be probably a year-long type effort for commerce, as well as a PIM solution from a technology standpoint, but really the business transformation for the self-service channel. So I'll stop there, and there's probably a ton of questions you can ask on that kind of lead off, if that makes sense.
Excellent. So yeah, I'm actually just going to go right into the next slide, and we'll start kind of peeling that large onion back just a little bit. So obviously, with when you are growing and scaling a business, there's both the organic aspects of it, as well as many companies, Neogen included, also do some acquisition level. Scott, I'm going to just keep the ball rolling with you. You just tell us a little bit about sort of the Neogen growth strategy, how PIM has played into that, both from an organic as well as an acquisition perspective.
Yeah, good question. So we do have organic growth, both in the U.S. as well as internationally. And then with acquisitions, if you kind of look at our press releases each year, I think I've calculated about an average of 3 per year for the past at least 10 years plus out there. So with that, we have a very strategic growth strategy in our company with our activities. And with those, it's very, I want to say it's strategic in nature. So we really want to grow our market share, obviously, but the next is actually have new product development type growth. Third would be like our international expansion, which is really part of it. And the last would be our synergistic acquisitions. And those are really our pillars of growth in our strategy with that. So setting up a commerce system and having a really solid base of product information management globally was really important to us in this journey as we continue to build our solution here.
Excellent. So you mentioned the expansion, the scalability, needing to go global. I'm going to turn my attention to Jonathan Currie. So Jonathan, you worked heavily with the team on the data model, and in this case, we sort of started a bit smaller, right? We started with a limited set. We didn't bite off every bite of the elephant in one piece. But that meant that you needed to do some things architecturally in building the data model to build it out for the future, for scalability. Can you talk to our listeners a little bit about some of the thinking process and some of the things you have to do differently to do PIM and simultaneously plan for the future?
Sure. So what we wanted to do was understand, at least as much as we could, what the data model needed to look like in order to scale to support those additional business units and additional ERPs in the future. So what we did is we went through sort of our standard process of looking at the initial data load with sample data, working with Steve to build the initial data model, and then we took an additional revision, which we don't always do for customers, but in this case we felt it was necessary to get a sample data set from an additional business unit and to analyze that both in terms of the attributes and the relationships entities against what we had for the initial data set. And in this case, we're able to help identify the right structure to support that so that future iterations could be done with new data loading and with minimal configuration and rework.
Excellent, thanks, Jonathan. And then with that, Steve, I'm gonna turn the spotlight towards you for a minute. So we've talked about the scalability needs of Neogen, the ability to continue to expand organically as well as acquisition. EnerWorks is kind of a uniquely positioned product in that it was sort of built for this. Can you just talk to us a little bit about some of the bullets on there, the integrated DAM, how EnerWorks handles non-conforming data, and the ability to do mass edit and some of the MDM capabilities?
I'd be glad to. Thank you. So fortunately, the EnerWorks solution incorporates DAM features just as it does for other types of data. So the DAM itself is just an extension of the standard set of features. And the base solution of EnerWorks is exceptionally flexible and is extendable to meet virtually any set of requirements. And in fact, the EnerWorks solution, for those that aren't familiar, we start from scratch when we design an overall data model. We don't have predefined types of entities. And as a consequence, it allows us to tailor a solution to meet very specific requirements, including those involving digital assets. So we have an ability to link those digital assets to any record in the system. And as new records are brought in, as an organization scales up, we have an ability to incorporate new types of digital assets and link those to, again, any record in the system. So making the scalability relatively straightforward. There is a mass edit capability within EnerWorks as well, and in incorporation with that, non-conforming data acceptance. Both of those can really be addressed through a combination of features that are available in EnerWorks. For example, let's assume that you're onboarding new content from a new source, new ERP system, for example, and some of that data doesn't conform to the standards and guidelines that have been established. In many PIM and MDM solutions, that content needs to be cleaned up before it can be brought into the PIM or MDM solution. But that's not the case with EnerWorks. You actually can onboard that data, and violations of business rules and validation rules will be flagged, and you have an ability to allow for the application, that is the PIM application in the case of EnerWorks, to process this data as you have in the past, that is, continue to flow that data through to its receiving systems downstream. However, you can use the flagging of this non-conforming data as a way to build a to-do list to clean up that data that's been brought on. So non-conforming data can be very readily adapted within EnterWorks, so it can be cleaned up and then ultimately distributed. There is a mass edit feature as well. So where we see non-conforming data, we can apply a change very broadly to a whole set of records. And you get to define whatever set of records it is that you want to work with. And the process to do that is very straightforward within EnterWorks. And finally, of course, from the standpoint of being able to scale to support not just product domain, but vendor or supplier domain, customer domain, employee, location, because we start with a base of capabilities in EnterWorks that in which we don't predefine the entities, we can scale to include all types of MDM domains. So as a consequence, we can scale very readily to support those additional needs.
Excellent, excellent. So just one thing as well, I think we were talking before. So Scott, you guys have used some of these functionalities. Obviously, you've got the integrated DAM, and you got to experience kind of pulling in some data that wasn't conforming to the data model, then working through that. With the mass edit function, one thing to note is just to be careful with that, right? Because with great responsibility or great power comes great responsibility. To be sure that you're doing the diligence on the mass edit, that it's that you get the data going in the right direction. Did you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, sure. I'd be glad to. It's one of the actual benefits and features that we actually went with EnterWorks versus some of the other competitive products. And I'm not trying to tout it. It's just that was one of the key requirements, is the ability, instead of clicking through a website or a web page or multiple web pages, thousands, and having like death by 1,000 cuts, we really wanted to have a mass edit feature, which also, as you kind of said, gives you a lot of power because you can actually mess things up quickly too. And I kind of said that jokingly because we have a couple people responsible for quality of data and quality of product information, but having that mass edit feature is a real benefit. So that way you can quickly load data, you can quickly adjust if you want to do those mass edits and have all of those approved at once. It really is nice.
Yeah, that is fantastic, and it's definitely something that you don't see in every PIM solution that's out there, is the ability to do those mass changes. So that's fabulous. Let's take a jump over to user experience. So again, kind of coming back around to Scott again on this one. Scott, how important is user experience or customer experience at Neogen, and was there any drive behind that with wanting to go with a PIM solution?
Yeah, that's one of the things we really tried to strive is we had in one of our key business drivers, besides a self-service channel, is actually making it really the best customer experience possible. Not only for finding information, because our previous website, the way it was structured was content, education, information one place, and then online ordering and shopping in a different place. And we really wanted to make sure that online experience was seamless. The second piece to that is there's multiple channels of getting out information to our customers. So we really wanted to have that one Neogen experience for not only the online presence for a commerce as well as their ordering experience, but secondary, and this is where a PIM really was one of the benefits for us, we can actually now integrate our online brochure and catalog creation for those customers that still access catalogs and online content via a PIM system. So we really have two publications out via the one source of truth of product information in the PIM system. So that's really one of the things, is that not only be mobile friendly, we wanted good optimization within our website. We wanted that one experience, but the same experience for print and or online and or whatever method is necessary. And that really created that for us. Not only for the US too, but globally as well. So that's that's really a nice feature.
Excellent. Steve, what are some of the integrated aspects of EnterWorks that really enhances the user experience by kind of bringing that product data all the way through and out to the endpoints? Oop, did we lose Steve?
Nope, I was on mute. Sorry about that. So that's a good question. So integrations with EnterWorks are relatively easy to implement, and it allows us to create a user experience that is that incorporates all of the linked set of content that you choose to store within EnterWorks. For example, if you have if you have item content that's linked to digital assets, or linked to vendors, or linked to customers, all of that information can be tied together through a user experience in the EnterWorks user interface, such that if you're on a given record, you can see all of those linked relationships and navigate to those linked relationships as well. So instead of needing to exit from a given record to be able to search for a set of related records, you have an ability to simply view those related records in a tabular display, double click, and you're immediately brought to that related record. When it comes to ultimately to integrations outside of EnterWorks, our customers have a broad base of requirements when it comes to sharing that information, and whether it is through a standard type of flat file integration or through integrations on a real-time type basis, all of those potential options are available to our customers, so that as they integrate ERP solutions and web solutions with EnterWorks, it can be somewhat seamless in terms of the update of content, the onboarding of new content, and then the distribution of that content outbound.
Excellent, excellent. And one of the things I love is, there's so many use cases that that PIM enables or enhances, and I think one that a lot of people don't necessarily think about is beefing up the ability for the sales team, the boots on the street sales team, to better serve the customers. This isn't just about pushing product data through the system and out to a commerce site or out to a syndicated channel. In some cases, and it was the case with EnterWorks, there's some unique functionality in the site that allows the sales team to locate the product data, more current product data, make sure that everything is accurate, and then even produce sales sheets. So I know that that there is a sales portal. I know EnterWorks is actually enhancing and rewriting it, and it'll be the new version is coming out in a future release. So really excited to see the new and improved sales portal and what that does for sales teams across the globe, as they have access to better, faster, more accurate product data that they can walk into their customers with. Jonathan, real quick, let's turn to you. The last bullet on here talks about cross-sell, upsell capabilities. So what is it, kind of when you're designing and you're building data models and things, that you need to sort of consider when you're looking at allowing someone like Neogen to be able to do some cross-sell and upsell?
Sure, and I'm not going to quote Spider-Man because I think this is a pretty straightforward thing to do in EnterWorks. But in terms of developing your link relationships, and it also, from the C2 side, we want to take a look at the customer's holistic solution. So in the case of Neogen, we had to make some decisions as to which content and which relationships would be mastered within EnterWorks as the MDM solution for product data and product relationships and digital assets. And then in this particular case, we chose to make some link relationships related to cross-sell and upsell. And Neogen has specific types of links that, materials required related to lab test kits and that sort of things. That are not just their core products, but some of their associated more commodity or different types of products that are needed to make a test kit function properly. And Scott could talk a little bit more about that. And in this case, we had to make, and this was a deliberate thing we had to do at several points in the project and say, okay, for the content managers, are they going to be managing this in the e-commerce solution, or are they going to be managing it in the PIM? And in this case, for defining different types of linked relationships, we did that in the PIM. And it really comes down to modeling the data so that you can export it and syndicate it properly.
Excellent. Thanks, Jonathan. So one of the things that I really love about PIM solutions, and one of the things that drew me to that entire industry, is how the software solution like AnaWorks has such a strong and compelling return on investment model. And I think that's because it plays on both sides of the P&L. So you will get efficiencies. You'll get efficiencies coming through from and not having to manually adjust data and keep track of data and keep track of spreadsheets and all these types of things. So you get a nice expense reduction there. If you're retail especially, you'll get an expense reduction with more accurate product being sold to the customer. So your return costs go down. So you play on the expense side. But then there's the revenue side as well. And that's kind of what you were talking about, Jonathan, a little bit with the cross-sell, upsell. And you'd said, appropriately, Scott could probably, talk a bit more about this, and I'm going to ask him to do so. So Scott, I know that, kind of being a visionary for the company in this, you've got a big laundry list of some of these ROI capabilities that you were looking to gain access to, obviously to cover the cost of the software and the C2 implementation costs and be profitable on the other side. What are some of your goals for the revenue generating side of the PIM, the ability to link products together that are similar to do kind of some of that cross-sell, upsell work?
That's a good question, and it's one of the drivers that we had as part of our solution here. So specifically not only within, let's say, a product family, as Jonathan talking about, where you might have a certain lab or a certain farm or something that is buying a product, or let's say a test kit or some type of toxin kit, or let's say some type of pathogen type kits, where you might want to complement the rest of the lab with additional products. So that's a good capability to cross-sell within that certain area. But in addition, we also have customers that are across our lines of business. So let's say you're a dairy farmer, and you think of our customers are really anyone from literally the farm to the fork, and every company in between that is raising crops or animals in helping protect the food supply. I mean, those are the type of products that we sell. So there's a lot of cross-functional areas within divisions, or really our major line of products within, let's say, a dairy farm, which they might be testing for dairy antibiotics. They also might be running the dairy and buying a lot of the animal safety products to keep the animals safe with the biosecurity type products or others, or veterinary type products. I mean, there's numerous areas. So that's another really cross-sell, upsell for the top line kind of revenue growth. And then on the flip side, for kind of like the bottom line type activities, as you're saying, really the operational effectiveness to having one system, one common system for all our product managers, all our marketing and product folks that are putting in extra content and assets and images that are related to that, where we have those relationships within there. So that's a big feature. And I'd say the last one that really is a kind of a long-term goal that we have is to not only make, like you said, the sales and marketing portals accessible, so our own employees don't really have to surf our website to access content. They really can access the sales and marketing portal from the PIM system in AnaWorks. But secondary, we also are multinational, meaning we sell in to customers that speak in different languages, and we are actually located in multiple countries. So with that, we actually allow or have a needed capability to have language translation for our scientific products, as well as sometimes looking at automatic translation services integrated right with the AnaWorks tool. And we're actually going down that journey right now to start we knew that AnaWorks had the capability, and now we're actually looking at integrating automatic language translation besides the manual language translations that we do today. So that's a really big challenge for us, but it's also a journey, and it's nice to have that not only cross-sell, upsell efficiencies, but now have that master location of product data for the language difference and the language translations within one tool set that's common for all.
That's awesome. Thank you, Scott. So before we actually leave this slide, I just wanted to spin it back around to Steve one more time. So As we kind of talk through all this stuff, Steve, so we talk PIM a lot, right? So product information management, but EnterWorks is bigger than that. EnterWorks is a true multi-domain master data management system and platform. So what are some of the additional domains that you typically will see a customer put in that goes kind of beyond just the product information and begins to tie that full customer and that full user experience together? What are a couple of the additional domains that that you typically see within EnterWorks implementations? You may be speaking on mute.
I was, sorry. Fortunately, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of customers who implement multi-domain solutions. And the one that comes up most often is the supplier domain. And along with that, there are integrations from supplier content that are very common to an overall solution. So not only is a supplier a part of the overall definition of the multi-domain solution, but very often those suppliers are providing product data. So an integration of vendor or supplier specific information as well as the vendor supplied data is one of the most common things that I tend to see out in the marketplace today. But also customers and contacts. Several of our recent projects have involved customer and contact information. And there's often overlap between the two. And given our flexibility in building data models that are tailored to our customers' requirements, we can build that solution that allows for a customer and a contact to be represented by a single record, but yet have distinct roles and data associated with those roles. And so that's another one of the domains we work with. And finally, location information. So many of our customers operate in a variety of locations, and that data, the location-specific data, commonly gets tied into product data as well. So integrations occur from product domain data to the vendor or supplier data to customer and contact data, as well as location data and employee data for a couple of our customers as well. So those are some examples of the domains that we've worked with so far.
Excellent, thank you. So before we kind of take a look at the future roadmap slide, I want to remind everyone who's on here listening in today. If you have questions, I know we've covered a lot of content. We may have covered terminology that you're unfamiliar with. Or if you'd like a little bit more information on anything you've heard anyone talk about to date, please go ahead and you can enter your questions in the Q&A feature on this meeting, and we'll get to those at the end. Moving forward, so the future PIM roadmap. So I'm going to turn this one back to Scott again at the beginning. So Scott, obviously we've touched on this, I think, briefly in some of the previous slides, but as you continue forward, with your digital transformation, both PIM and beyond, what are some of the things that are on your roadmap as you continue forward?
Yeah, great question. Some of them I already mentioned, and Steve mentioned the next one. But the biggest one is integration with all of our ERP systems. So as a company of acquisitions, while we'd love to have one ERP, we have multiple, and with that, we need the capabilities to actually integrate each ERP system into our product information management system for master product management across the board globally. So we get SKU consolidation, and we really have a comprehensive view that way. So that's one. The second is integration of language translations, which we talked about. And then I really like what was said before about vendors and suppliers. So that is another long-term goal that we have, is to not only, we do a lot of purchasing of materials, but we also have vendors where we're the manufacturer of the product, and we're actually the distributor sometimes, where we want to get the information, the product information, to our distributors, and then they may have their own marketplace site or their own website as well. So what we'd like to do is not only control the data, but really give a high quality so we can give them access to the PIM system, or we can have a feed that integrates with their commerce or their solution. More like instead of a sales and marketing portal for our employees, having a vendor supplier portal that we can receive content from when we're buying simple buy sell stuff, or when we're manufacturing, sending that product information in a quality way to our distributors and vendors. And then I think the last one that I would say is really the print integration. So we know it's there. We have the capability today. We're seeing less and less print capabilities, but that's another channel, whether it's web or print, that we want to have that consistency. So instead of copying and doing a one-time print for our brochure type activities and our slicks and information, we really drive that from the EnerWorks system product data that we have as the master source of products. So that's what I would say is our vision. And for all of those, give it a year or so. We took a year to kind of get here and formulate, and as we continue to go, it'll probably be I mean, all of those things might take about a year, give or take, maybe plus, depending on how quickly we want to move on certain things.
Right.
So I really appreciate C2's understand. I mean, one of the benefits that I see here is C2 really has a lot of understanding of data. And that's one of the reasons that I really liked not only EnerWorks, but C2 really was a master of data, I call it. And the people that knew the most about data is the people who won. So we went through, as you know, Tom, an extensive evaluation process, and C2 was the choice that we made.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. And it's been it's been an awesome ride, and we look forward to continuing pushing on some of these these items with you. So I'm gonna turn the attention over to Steve again for a moment. So kind of looking at the word roadmap through a little bit of a different lens. Obviously, EnerWorks is a living, breathing organism that is continually adding features and enhancing the current software. I mentioned before that the sales rep portal that's being rewritten currently. Excited to see that one come out in a future release. Steve, is there anything else that you're able to call out from a roadmap perspective?
Well, I can tell you that our latest release, EnerWorks 10.2, is due out very shortly, most likely this month. Oh, I probably shouldn't speak out of turn here. I actually should turn this over to Currie and ask Currie. He's in a much stronger position to be able to address what's forthcoming in the next release or releases of EnerWorks.
Oh, put me on the spot. Thanks.
Yes. Sorry.
Actually 10.2 came out today. So.
Oh, wow.
Wow, fantastic.
Look at that. Look at that. We need a round of applause track that we can play in the background. That's awesome.
And we have a whole set of release notes and updates in terms of the new features and enhancements. So we can send that out to everybody, but most of it has to do with some underlying architectural enhancements that we've made around scalability and performance, along with some new features around the user experience as well. So we can provide, again, more details in terms of what's in this release and out to the audience. In terms of future roadmap and what we're working on, we have a lot of things going on. Our next release is scheduled to come out at the end of the year. New capabilities around some of the domains, additional domains that we've talked about, a customer domain and vendor domain. We're creating application-specific functionality around these domains. You already mentioned the sales portal. We have our next version of the sales portal coming out. Some additional enhancements around the APIs and web services, and just the ability to do more and more around integrations and real-time pub and sub, we call it. So a lot of exciting things coming up, even still this year.
Awesome. Thanks, Carrie. Looks like putting you on the spot worked out well this time, considering that this was the release date for 10.2. That's great. So we're gonna wind up the formal part of the presentation with a little thing I like to call the big digital trends. So in this case, again, everyone who's listening in today has cut off a chunk of their day to participate in here and learn more about what Neogen's done with PIM and a little bit more about EnterWorks. And what I wanted to do is just take our three talented panelists and just ask them, PIM or otherwise, what are you seeing on the horizon? What would you like to kind of highlight to our audience today? So, from Scott, from your perspective, big digital trends, what are you seeing?
Yeah, great question. And one I answer for our CEO and CFO and others commonly of kind of where things and what we're seeing. So there's a lot of what I'm going to call disruptive digital technologies out there and really trends, but master data is definitely one of them. Customer experience is another, and I think it ties really well with what we're talking about here. The other trends I'm seeing is a significant amount of machine learning and AI capabilities. So there's a lot of tool sets that are coming out around those is once you have the data and you can extract it or see it or disparate data sets, then utilizing some type of machine learning or integration of our artificial intelligence within that is another area, sometimes called prescriptive data analytics as well. So that's a really big area that we're seeing. And then I would say the last one is because we're in manufacturing and others, as well as we sell products, is a lot of the IoT space or Internet of Things space, where a lot of these smart devices, smart technologies, or smart whatever things that are out there, a lot of interfacing back and forth of across the area. So I would say those are the big ones. There's some other ones out there, but I'll leave some others if there's questions. I know everything I've mentioned so far we're involved with, as well as numerous other disruptive technology trends that we're seeing in the marketplace today.
Very nice. All right, Steve, what are you seeing? You work with a whole bunch of customers. What are you seeing as far as a large digital trend or trends right now in the marketplace?
Scott touched on a couple of the points that I was planning on making, but the customer experience is so key to getting the value out of your MDM solution that there are some extensions to what has traditionally been a limited role for a PIM solution to a much broader role. And the concepts of AI, as well as augmented reality around digital assets. So imagine, if you would, an experience in the future that is fed by content out of an MDM and PIM solution, whereby the user not only gets to see a single image or multiple images of a given product, but can see that product in the context of the planned use of that product in an augmented reality type of experience. And so I know that EnterWorks is focused on building as complete a solution as possible that incorporates those types of digital assets as well. And as a result, I think you'll see a PIM and MDM solution that grows to obviously include these other types of ultimate customer experiences that can be driven by that content that we store in a PIM or MDM.
Excellent. That's exciting stuff. That's really cool stuff. So last but not least, Jonathan, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I know that, you and I obviously work together on all the different PIM and MDM engagements. And one thing that we've definitely seen is a lot of work with the iPaaS platforms as well, the integration platform as a service. And I know that this is, in addition to MDM and PIM in your business unit that you run, the integration platform as a service also rolls up through you, with a lot of work on the MuleSoft platforms and the Dell Boomi platforms and those things. So why do you think we're seeing such kind of a rise in the integration platforms as opposed to the traditional kind of file drop and point-to-point APIs?
So I think the integration platforms are really allowing projects to happen in a decoupled manner. So if you think back 10 years ago, big technology or big digital transformation projects were dependent on one big system getting upgraded and then another one getting upgraded. And with the iPaaS solutions, we're able to do things kind of pointing at the legacy systems, integrating with them for a period of time while they're being upgraded and sunsetted and replaced with newer versions, and still build the front ends at the same time and integrate with the other more advanced, enriched data solutions. Because again, we're seeing more product data and more rich product content online than we've ever seen before, not just weights and specs, but performance characteristics, compatibility, and taking that self-serve model for really forward with rich product content. And I think the iPaaS as well as the MDM products are allowing that to happen.
Awesome. So that's fantastic. And this concludes the panel portion of our presentation here today. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to turn it back over to Currie from EnterWorks to just do a quick overview of some of the upcoming virtual conferences that EnterWorks has put together, and then we'll move into our Q&A session. So again, if you do have questions, feel free to go ahead and add those to the list that we have here. And we will, time permitting, we'll try to get to as many of those questions as possible. So Currie, let me turn it back over to you. If you want to speak briefly about, some of the other conferences that are upcoming here, and then we'll move to Q&A.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so on Thursday, we have Animal Supply talking to us about how they're using the EnterWorks solution around upgrading, if you will, their product information. Similar to Neogen, they have several ERP systems as well, and have had to create a platform for tying together all of those platforms into a single data management solution. So that's on Thursday. And then next week, as you can see, we have several others, including Ecolab, IPC, and several other exciting ones as well. So stay tuned for that. In fact, on the 15th, we have a really interesting speaker as well, Scott Taylor, who refers to himself as the data whisperer, and I've heard him speak before. He's a great speaker, so that should be super exciting. So let's, if you wouldn't mind, let's turn over to questions. And first of all, Scott, congratulations on taking on so much and sort of conquering this huge initiative. Listening through all of the considerations and the things that you had to think about and implement, super impressive. So congrats on that.
Well, thank you very much. No, it was a team effort, though, I got to admit. I mean, while we can set a vision and whatnot, the Neogen team internally did a great job, but really thankful for the C2 team and their collaboration with our other partners, as well as the EnterWorks team, not only from our evaluation process, even talking to Currie, but everybody on the phone as well. So it was definitely a team effort. So kudos to all. Appreciate the thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you. And and C2, the masters of data. Congratulations as well to you. So, so let's start off with a few questions. And this first question, I guess, can be either for Jonathan or Steve. So, when you designed the current data model for this first release, how are you making sure that it was designed for future use cases as well?
So I can take that one, Currie. One of our exercises we did was to get a sample data set for some of those future use cases and analyze if there's any additional attributes or data characteristics that needed to be updated in our data model.
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, just to point out that the model includes, for those of you that are data model oriented, it includes both a repository for item content as well as ERP item content, and they're related in a one-to-many relationship. So an individual item record that represents a core record can have multiple associated ERP item records. And so each new ERP system that comes on board may reference some of the same items that already exist, but we can capture distinct information from that ERP source, store it distinctly, but use that content from that ERP, that new ERP record to help supplement or add to the core content that's stored on the core record. So taking advantage of a feature known as dynamic attributes on this ERP item record, we can tailor some of the content to the specific ERP systems without having to alter the core content that's stored on each ERP item. So we don't need to add additional repositories or record types to be able to support the addition of new ERP systems into the fold. So provides a nice flexible approach to adapting longer term to the adoption of, or the integration of, new ERP solutions.
Great, thank you. And Scott, as you've rolled this out, the solution out, and as your company has started working with PIM, how's it going in terms of your users' ability to adapt? And have you seen what sort of efficiencies have you seen?
Yeah, good question. The efficiencies are a couple-fold. One is we have better turnkey change management type procedures. So if we just have simple changes, whether it's just a simple wording change, someone notices on a website there was a spelling mistake or a grammatical, or they just want to word something differently, or there's just a value, maybe a threshold that was changed from a technical product perspective, that things can be published we're putting that capability back into more of the business users, the business customers' hands, or really employees for us. So that's really been one of the efficiencies that we've seen a lot. The second thing is we now have insights into all of our data in one location, as opposed to we had disparate data locations and sources for whether it's product content or it's locally stored on someone's hard drive or in a network drive, or on our website. So trying to tie all 4 or 5 of those together, now we have it in one master location, which makes things a lot easier to analyze. And that's one of the benefits right now that we're seeing. We are going through kind of a retraining process while we have the initial conversion and the activities to really make sure adoption is solid. So that's one of the areas that we're trying to improve on in some of the feedback that we've gained. I think probably because internally from the lessons learned, we had just some quick training sessions as opposed to allowing people to really use it and use the tool on a day-to-day basis, because people's day jobs are really busy. So training is always unless you use it, you kind of lose it or forget it. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, well, great. And I guess speaking of adoption, Steve or Jonathan, if one of our listeners is thinking about bringing in a PIM, what sort of organizational changes would they have to make, or should they consider making?
This is Steve. One of the things that is commonly not done broadly when we come in to help one of our customers out is to have a formal data stewardship function or organization that addresses the need for better governing of data. And so one of the best things an organization can do with the adoption of PIM and MDM solution is to formalize that setup of governance through data stewards. So having individuals and organization units that are focused on creating standards and guidelines, as well as process for implementing change to data, can go an incredibly long way towards improving the consistency and the quality of the data that's available. And as it happens, the EnerWorks solution can help facilitate that process by including those data stewards in an overall business process, so that The new data that comes on board can be reviewed and validated by the data stewards before it gets widely disseminated.
And Scott, you mentioned sort of one of your lessons learned around training. Were there any other sort of expected gotchas or lessons learned now that you look back on this?
Yeah, I would say the second lessons learned, and it's a little bit what Steve was talking about too, is for best practices, is we actually created a position specifically for quality of data management in this role. So we knew that going in that we would have to have an assigned role. And fortunately, we had somebody internally that knew products really well. So when they applied for it, we were glad they did, and it worked out well. One of the things that, from a lessons learned standpoint, though, is the workflow that EnterWorks can set up and do. Sometimes there's some complexities when people try to design the perfect workflow on a piece of paper. And I've seen this with not just PIM solutions or master data management, but whether it's project management or just operational governance, it sometimes is a little bit overdone because it's great on paper and in theory, but until you do it. So I would say we did about 80–90% correct in setting up our workflow and approval structures, but now once we use it, it was probably just a slightly overdone, and now we're just making it a little bit, we're optimizing it, you could probably say, and just adjusting that so that way it's a little bit based more on reality as opposed to like what you think is perfect on a paper. So that was probably the only lessons learned I would say is don't overdo the workflow. You can always add more to it, but if you get too complex right away, then it sometimes deters people from using it as much.
Exactly. We refer to that as over workflowing yourself to death because you can easily do that looking at the tool and looking what can be done.
Type things. Yeah,
exactly. And then I guess last question before we break away, and Steve, this is for you. What are some of the unique values of PIM for a company growing mostly through acquisition? I know we talked about a few of them.
We have. So an organization that is expanding, via acquisition really needs an ability to extend the data model and the ability to onboard new data values from new sources very readily. So obviously, the EnterWorks solution readily supports this. In EnterWorks, there are virtually no limitations to extending an existing data model to match the new requirements. However, in an organization where acquisition is common, such as a Neogen, it really is critical that the initial data model be capable of supporting those planned additional sources of information. And I mentioned just previously how through a data structure, a change to the data model, to include not just a core item record, but item content that's specific to an ERP that we've labeled an ERP item, that can go an incredibly long way towards facilitating the onboarding of new content without having to do any type of significant change to the core data model. And that, I think, is absolutely key to allowing for an environment that can accept new content, new data, without having to go back to the drawing board in terms of how to support that content. Finally, EnterWorks supports the ability to handle those new data values, and I mentioned this previously, so readily that you can bring that new content on, and even if it violates those business rules that we encourage you to set up to improve the governance, you have an ability to flag those and create your to-do list from that. That really allows for the quick onboarding of new content from a new source as you extend to include new acquisition content. So with all of that in hand, those features, EnterWorks does a pretty good job of supporting new ERP onboarding. It's a solution. This approach has been one that I've seen implemented at multiple customer sites, and it works very well.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Steve. And everybody, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Scott, Jonathan, Tom, Steve, for a terrific panel discussion. And hope everybody has a great day, and talk to everybody again on Thursday. Take care.